South China Morning Post, 8 April 2024. Sri Lanka seeks additional investment assistance from China, but the move will unlikely undermine strong ties with India and the United States. Sri Lanka is approaching China for its deceptively inexpensive loans, which enslave ordinary people and leave countries indebted to China. Sri Lanka is compelled to seek financial assistance from China to fund extensive infrastructure initiatives. However, this action is anticipated to trap the nation in debt and negatively impact its diplomatic ties with India and the United States. Previous Chinese investments have rendered Sri Lanka fiscally more vulnerable. However, experts predict that forthcoming Chinese capital inflows into the island will likely take the form of equity investment by Chinese enterprises rather than debt financing. Following discussions with Beijing, Sri Lankan Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena announced on March 27 that China had agreed to develop the unprofitable Colombo International Airport and the Chinese-occupied Hambantota port. According to a joint statement released by the Chinese Foreign Ministry on March 29, the two nations have reached a mutual understanding to make every effort to promote the port city Colombo and Hambantota development projects, transforming them into flagship projects. The Chinese government transferred the southern seaport of Hambantota to a state-owned enterprise in 2017 for a 99-year lease for $1.12 billion. This development has caused India, a regional rival of Beijing, to express security concerns. According to Gunawardena, China will aid Sri Lanka's external debt restructuring, a crucial requirement for sustaining a $2.9 billion bailout from the International Monetary Fund, IMF. According to the Chinese statement, Beijing is willing to continue supporting its financial institutions to actively negotiate with Sri Lanka, play a positive role in the IMF, and assist Sri Lanka in financial relief. Sri Lanka, which declared bankruptcy in 2022 and halted repayments on approximately $83 billion in domestic and foreign loans after depleting its foreign reserves, has China as its largest bilateral creditor. As an international relations analyst, Shakti De Silva remarked that Sri Lanka turned to China because Beijing had been its primary development partner in both initiatives. Due to its current economic situation, Sri Lanka has a limited capacity to secure foreign economic support for the development of both projects, he stated. Sri Lanka has experienced a gradual recovery in its economy since its most severe economic crisis occurred 2 years ago. However, as of last month, the IMF reported that Sri Lankans have experienced a decline in purchasing power as a result of elevated taxes and currency devaluation. Unresumed operations of sectors that disintegrated during the height of the crisis have contributed to the persistently high unemployment rate. Although India and Western nations have long voiced apprehensions regarding China's presence in Hambantota, De Silva predicted that the most recent action would likely strain relations between the island and New Delhi or Washington. Previous visits by Chinese research vessels to Hambantota, southern Sri Lanka, have caused India to be concerned about the expansion of Beijing's influence in the Indian Ocean. De Silva observed that the United States had pledged to invest $553 million to construct a new container terminal in Colombo and provided the Sri Lanka Navy with a fourth Coast Guard cutter for use in maritime operations and law enforcement missions in February and November, respectively. De Silva stated that since relations with India are also robust, the island should be capable of addressing any apprehensions that both nations may have. India extended over $4.5 billion in humanitarian and economic aid to Sri Lanka during its economic crisis and supported Colombo's endeavors to restructure its debt. India has also made investments in oil refineries and energy initiatives on the island. Neil Devata, a professor of politics and international affairs at Wake Forest University in the United States, stated that the offer to develop the Hambantota port further could be considered a development package because it was included in 9 bilateral agreements. However, Devata stated that it was unclear whether the move was a win-win investment or whether it would be more aligned with Chinese strategic interests at the expense of Sri Lanka due to the lack of information regarding the signed memorandums of understanding. Devata stated, "Unfortunately, the construction of the Chinese debt-ensnared Hambantota port has not yet benefited the locals in that region while simultaneously increasing Sri Lanka's fiscal vulnerability." Former President Mahinda Rajapaksa, who served for a decade until 2015 and purportedly borrowed heavily from Beijing for projects that many criticized as a debt trap that precipitated the worst economic crisis in Sri Lanka's history, initiated construction on the southern seaport of Hambantota. According to the World Bank, poverty in the country doubled from 13 to 25% between 2021 and 2022. while urban poverty tripled from 5 to 15%. Analyst De Silva says the Chinese debt trap was put to rest years ago when a portion of Sri Lanka was ceded to Chinese occupation. Noting that a significant portion of the island's $46 billion in foreign debt was owed to China, De Silva stated that allegations that Colombo granted a 99-year lease on the port under Chinese coercion or because China cornered Sri Lanka into accepting the deal have been proven to be accurate. He noted, citing an IMF report, that the government owed $1.633 billion to holders of international sovereign bonds, ISB, $338 million to China Development Bank, and $7 million to other foreign commercial creditors as of December 2022. According to research on Sri Lanka's debt, repayments on Eurobonds or dollar-denominated ISBs borrowed from international capital markets exceeded twice the proportion of debt owed to China, according to De Silva. In contrast to Chinese loans, however, they did not create debt. De Silva stated, Sri Lanka was thus ensnared in a debt trap orchestrated by the Chinese. He added that Colombo might be hesitant to accept additional loans for development initiatives if the terms are onerous to the island, particularly in the short to medium term. De Silva added, foreign leaders will also be hesitant to add to Sri Lanka's debt in light of the country's precarious economic situation and the potential backlash this could provoke. Toshiro Nishizawa, a professor at the Graduate School of Public Policy of the University of Tokyo, stated that Chinese aid to the airport and port would likely take the form of equity investments by Chinese enterprises with minimal government involvement, as opposed to debt financing. That which is virtually identical. An equity investment consists of funds allocated to purchase shares of a particular company on the stock market. Therefore, it is improbable that the Chinese proposal will cause Colombo to incur additional debt obligations, Nishizawa stated.